Hi, my name is Amanda, and thanks for watching today. Before we get started, we want to fill you in on our church. Here at Grace, we have a mission and a purpose. Our goal is to help people discover truth, decide on Jesus, demonstrate change, and deploy for others. If you're looking for a church, we would love for you to come and be a part of what God is doing here at Grace. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. We would also like to invite you to one of our Sunday morning services. Check out ohiograce.com for a list of campuses and service times in your area. We have a great time gathering for music, hanging out, and learning about who God is and how that affects our lives. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you here next week at Grace.
Well, hey, good to see you guys here this morning. We, as Mike had just mentioned, we are in our series called Be Free, where we are walking through the book, or really should be called the letter of Galatians, that was written by a guy named Paul to a bunch of churches in a Roman province called Galatia. And so the main point of his letter, the main reason why he's writing this is he's wants everybody to understand there that it is not about religion. Which is kind of ironic because here we are sitting in a church and you're like, well, isn't this religion? Isn't this what religion's all about? And for religion, he says, it's not about that. It's not about a bunch of rules of do's and don'ts that you got to do to follow God or to appease God so that someday he'll look at you and say, wow, all right, after you die, you've done so much good stuff. I really need you on my team. He's saying that's not what it's all about. He says what it's about is trusting in Jesus and what he did on that cross. He's saying it's not in what you do, it's in what he did. It's not in religion, it's in relationship. And so as you guys all know, or at least most of you should know, okay, because I've repeated this almost every week, is that the situation that's going on here is that there are a bunch of baby churches that were started by Paul in a Roman province, again, called Galatia. And just months later, Paul, he's out telling more people about Jesus, and he's in a different area of the Roman Empire, and some guys come to town, and they start saying to all these different churches, they kind of follow Paul, and they go to all these different places, and these guys start saying, they're saying, hey, man, it's great that you believe in Jesus and all. We love Jesus. We're all about Jesus. We are on Team Jesus. All right, that's totally cool, but you are not done. Really, just believing in Jesus, that's kind of like step number one. All right, there is a whole Old Testament law that you have to follow, and they're like, they got their Bibles and everything. They're like, check it out, it's here. All right, look for it. Look, it's right here. Don't you need to do what the Bible says? Isn't that the rule? Shouldn't you be following the rules here? And if you don't follow the Old Testament law, if you don't follow these rules that we have in our Old Testament, he's saying, then you're not really a true Christian. How could you be, they would say. And what they're doing here is that these guys, they come and they add a bunch of religious stuff that you have to do to be saved from hell. And the Galatian churches start to believe it. And when Paul hears this, man, he is angry. I mean, this ticks Paul off. In fact, that's what if you read, as we went through the first few weeks, I mean, he starts off, he's just like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Why are you doing this? Last week, he called them foolish. He's like, you are really dumb. Like, are you really this dumb? Is that what's really going on? Like, you really are believing this? And what the Galatian churches are doing is they are falling into the trap of religion, and that is the same trap that we find ourselves falling into today. And so today we're in chapter 4. But in order to get rolling, I need kind of a running start, all right? So I'm going to start in chapter 3 just a little bit, and then we're going to run into 4. And last week, we talked about how God made a promise to this guy named Abraham. Now, that was about, it's kind of easy how this is all split up. You got Abraham, and then 2,000 years later, you got Jesus, and this is when Paul, basically in the same time frame, this is when Paul is writing this letter that we're looking at today. And then 2,000 years after that, what do we got? Us. Does that make sense? All right, so as the world timeline, you guys are like, huh, what? Yeah, okay, so Abraham, 2,000 years, and then you got this letter being written, and then it's us, all right? So kind of easy for us to kind of understand where everything is at. But God makes a promise to Abraham, and what he says to Abraham, he says, hey, all right, I'm going to bless the world through you, all right, through your family line. Now, when he does this, God doesn't search the world for like the best person that he could find. In fact, if you remember, we want to get serious about Abraham. What do we see just in the things that we know? That he was a liar, he was an adulterer, he was a polygamist and a bad dad to most of his kids who trafficked his wife on multiple occasions for his gain. He's not winning like, husband of the year or anything like that. That's Abraham. But because God is so good to us, Jesus decides to make a promise to this man. And when he does this, Abraham, basically, he says, man, I know and I trust in you, God, that you have a plan to fix our sin problem, that you're going to do exactly what you say. I believe your promise. And God looks at Abraham and says, that's what I'm looking for. That trust in me, that's what I'm looking for. Abraham, that's what makes you right. And so 400 years later, Abraham, his family, he's long gone, but his family has grown into a small nation that we call Israel, and they were living in Egypt, and eventually they leave Egypt, and God leads this small nation of Israel, he leads them back to that small little piece of real estate that God had actually given to Abraham, all right? But on the way, God stops, and he says, hey, I want you to know me. I want to be your God. I want you to be my people, and through you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the world who I am. I'm going to show the world that I'm here, that I exist, and that I want a relationship with them. And so God gives them a deal. Now, this deal is different. Part of Paul's arguing here is this deal is so different than the promise that he made Abraham. Right? The promise that he made Abraham wasn't based off anything. It was a promise. Right? This deal it is based off stuff. He says, let's make a deal. That's what a deal is. He says, I'll give you a list of rules that you should follow. That's, by the way, what we call the Old Testament law. Okay, 613 rules that God gave the Jewish people. And he says, and if you follow these rules, then I will take care of you as a nation. And so the Old Testament law, we talked about last week, how the Old Testament law is it was like a babysitter. It was something to kind of watch over us. It was temporary. Or let's view it this way. It was kind of like an x-ray. You ever go break a bone or anything like that? What do? You go to the hospital, they take an x-ray, and the x-ray, it shows you the extent of the problem that's going on. Like on the inside, below the surface, stuff that you can't see everything on your own. It shows us what the problem is. Now, does the x-ray fix the problem? No. Okay, the answer is no. Okay, x-rays don't do that. They don't fix the problem. They just show you what the problem is. That was the Old Testament law. It showed the Jewish people that they were messed up. It was supposed to bring the Jewish people to the point where they're like, I can't do this. I need a God who can save me. I can't do this on my own. And so God gave Israel that deal. And what do we see as we read through the entire Old Testament is that throughout the Old Testament, the Jewish people did not keep up their end of the bargain. They just didn't. But the Jewish people, especially in Paul's day, in Jesus' time, the Jewish people believed that because they were in the genetic lineage of Abraham, that they had this special favor with God and that they automatically got to go to heaven and that they were all good. All they had to do is be Jewish, number one, which they couldn't help, and just be good people, and they were set. And that is very similar to how we think today. What we think today is we're like, well, I call myself a Christian and I'm a good person, so I'm good. All right, I'm good with God. We're set. I'm in his club. And Paul's main point of this entire letter is that is not how it works. Man, we're missing it. In fact, he says there is no Jew or Greek, right? Meaning God doesn't care about your race. He doesn't see through the lens of race, nor slave or free. He doesn't see through the lens of the position or anything like that. Or male or female. It doesn't see us through the lens of whether we're a guy or a girl. He says, since you are all one in Christ Jesus, meaning God doesn't pick favorites. He says, and if you belong to Jesus, then you are actually Abraham's seed, heirs according to the promise. He's saying this. He's saying, if you've placed your trust in Jesus, which isn't everybody in this room, but I'm assuming most of us have. If we have given our lives over to Jesus, then here's the deal. He's saying you are more related to Abraham than any random Jewish guy. Because you are related to him spiritually, which is so much more. He's saying you are in God's family. And that is such a bigger deal. And so as we get to chapter 4, some of this should sound familiar to you because we're kind of repeating over and over again, and that's what Paul does throughout this letter. He kind of repeats himself, and if Paul keeps repeating himself, I'm just throwing this out there, it probably is decently important, okay? And so that's what we're going to do. And so Paul, he says, picture it this way. He says, now, if I say that as long as the heir is a child, he says, he differs in no way from a slave. Now, when we see the word slave, what we do in our culture, in our society, is we automatically, we think racism, okay? And we're taught that ever since we're little kids, and that's because of our nation's past, and maybe rightly so. But in Rome, and kind of the way Paul's thinking through this in his culture, is slavery was not a race issue at all. So none of the people who are reading this letter are thinking race, because in Rome, all races owned slaves, and all races were slaves, right? There's white slaves, black slaves, Asian slaves. I mean, there's slaves all over the place. In fact, most of the population of the Roman Empire were slaves. And so Paul, he's arguing from a Roman culture context, and Paul's saying, think about it. He's saying when a mom and dad have, let's say, one son, they have a child. That child gets the inheritance. Does that make sense to us? Okay, that's the exact same as it is today. We're tracking so far. Okay, makes sense. It's kind of like for my kids, they are my heirs. And everything that I own, one day, will be theirs. So it's a little money in the bank, an old truck, small tractor, and a big mortgage. Hopefully they don't spend it all in one place. But that's what they get. But back then, like today, a child, or even though the child is an heir, if the parents die, the child can't actually own anything until they are an adult. This is the exact same situation that we have going on. A child can't legally own something. And so what we do today is we put the money into a trust, and we have all these rules set up or whatever. But back then what they did is they would entrust that child to a trusted slave. And so the child would be on the same level of a trusted slave. In fact, what Paul's kind of arguing here is he's saying that child would actually be lower than the slave because the trusted slave, who is not an heir, that trusted slave would actually be in charge of the child. Does that make sense? Again, it's like for us, a babysitter. You get a babysitter for your kids when you are gone. And is the babysitter an heir? Well, no, generally. Okay, let's say no. And do you love the babysitter as much as you love the child? No. Okay, you care about the babysitter, sure, that's fine. But it's different because it's not your child, and the babysitter's not related to you. The babysitter is not an heir yet. In hierarchy, who has the authority over the child? The babysitter. Same thing. So for them, Paul's saying the slave who owns nothing actually has a higher level of authority than the kid who's the heir. And so the kid, he says, is actually under guardians, or that trusted slave, or for us, like a babysitter, and the trustees until the time is set by the father. And so in our day, again, this is around 18 years old, a kid can finally legally own stuff. And so think of it this way. Like for my house, I don't know about your house, I don't know how you guys do things, but my house is not a democracy. It's just not. And that might not sound very American to you, but that's okay because my 3 kids would outnumber Kate and I, and that would be an issue if we voted on everything. If we gave our kids, think about it, the freedom to do whatever they want, it'd be a disaster. It would not be good for them. They would stay up late every night. They would eat all the bad stuff they want to eat. They would never go to school. They would watch TV most of the days. We would have no money because we'd spend it all on dumb stuff, and we'd have 6 dogs, a bunch of cats, and a panther for a pet. And so that would be a problem. So, out of love, we as parents, what do to our kids? We imprison them. Literally, kind of. We imprison them. We limit their freedom. We give them rules. We give them laws. We put people who are unrelated to us, like babysitters, over them for short periods of time. And our goal is not to make them miserable. By the way, that shouldn't be your goal, parents, all right? So don't make that your goal. All right, that's not what we want to do. We don't want to make their lives miserable. The goal is that, I don't know, when they're in their upper 20s, they can move out of their house and take care of themselves. That'd be really nice. That's our goal. And so the end goal at some point is that they won't need our rules, that they will be so used to making the right decisions that it will come natural for them to make those decisions on their own. Paul's saying that's kind of like what the Old Testament law was for us. He says in the same way, We also, when we were children, we were in slavery under the elements of this world. Meaning, before we came to Jesus, we were slaves to this world. And specifically for this group of people, he's talking about religion, which is a big one for even us here today. See, usually we're slaves to things that we think will make us happy. You know, the world's constantly pushing stuff in our face saying, this will make you happy, this is going to satisfy you, this is gonna bring you joy. All these things like relationships and money or the approval of others or the way we look or health or, again, the big one, religion. All the things that the world tells us that we should do to satisfy us, to make us feel good about ourselves. And instead of satisfying, you know what Paul's saying it does? It enslaves us. It turns us into slaves for that thing. And that's what you were. You realize that. At one point in your life, that's what you were. You were a slave to the world. So, he says, when the time came to completion, meaning when it was time, when it was all part of God's plan, when it was the perfect moment, God sent Jesus, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law so that we might receive adoption as sons. Now, this is huge. This is big, all right? Let's dig into this for a little bit. First of all, we know what the word redeem means, right? All right, some of us, it sounds kind of churchy, but we use that word in regular language, like when you redeem a coupon. We've all done that before, I'm assuming. We got coupon people in here? Oh, okay, dang. All the coupon people are in third service. I have to remember that, second and first, and we're like, nah, we don't do that stuff. Okay, that's cool. So you clip them, you got all your stuff. You got your system. For me, just a couple of weeks ago, I went to the mailbox, and all we have in our mailbox is bills and coupons. Like, that's all we get. And so there's a coupon to that new coffee place in town, 7 Brew. You guys know what I'm talking about? You guys been there? Some of you guys drinking your 7 Brew right now. Okay, there you go. That's cool. And I was looking at that, and usually, I throw that stuff immediately away just because I don't want all the papers laying around and everything. And I'm looking at it, it's like free drink. And I'm like, well, that's one I can use. Okay, that sounds pretty good to me. And so what did I do to deserve that coupon? Nothing. Okay? I was chosen by someone for some reason, along with all of Tiffin, I'm assuming. I wasn't the only one. And so Tuesday, because I was chosen, and I didn't choose myself, Tuesday I went up to the drive up, and there's a guy there, and he's like, hey, what would you like? And I don't know my coffee stuff. Usually Kate gets me coffee, and I hardly ever drink stuff like that. I don't know the words or the lingo because there's specific stuff. And either Kate will do that or whatever. And so I go up and I'm just like, I've had something here before, which was free also, which was awesome. And I'm like, it was like a frozen coffee chocolate thing. Can I have one of those? And the guy actually knew. He was like, oh yeah, this, and this, and this. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And he's like, that'll be about $7 or whatever the number was. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, actually, funny story, maybe for the guy behind me, but not me. You don't got me today. No way. And I handed him, I'm like, I got one of these. And he was like, oh, okay. And I redeemed the coupon. And I handed him the coupon, and he handed me my drink, which was awesome. And it was good, right? And it's the kind of drink that I used to make fun of AJ and Jacob about. It's like a mom drink. And I never drank them, but then I had one, and they're really good. And so that's what it is. And so what did that cost me? Nothing. What did I do to earn it? Nothing. What did it cost 7 Brew? Full price. The coffee people, whoever the coffee people are, they paid the price. Not part of it, they paid all of it. Kinda, that's what Jesus did for us, all right? That's just like, kinda, when Jesus redeemed us, he didn't pay just for part of us, and then it's like, oh, hey, I just paid for part of you. What I need you to do is I need you to kind of work some of this off, all right? So you just do really good stuff, and you practice all the religious stuff, and that'll be cool, and if you're doing good, then we're all good. No, he paid for all of us. Again, you guys have heard me say this 1,000 times. We bring nothing to the table except for the sin that we need to save from. That's it. That's all we got. And so this is super important. Check this out, all right? Focus back in. Paul's saying, so think about it. Jesus came to redeem us, And through his death, not our good stuff, he erases our sin when we fully trust him. And then, as if that wasn't enough, way even bigger than that, he adopts us as sons and daughters into his family. Right? It's crazy. See, usually when we talk gospel, and let me just define that, gospel, that word literally means good news. That's what it means. And so it's the good news, what we're talking about, the good news of what Jesus has done for us, and that's what this is. And so usually when we talk gospel here, we've been talking about it a lot, we're talking about how Jesus took our sin and he paid for it and he swapped our records, and it's kind of like a courtroom setting. And that's what we see all throughout the Bible. Like it's just true. But Paul here, he takes us to a different aspect. He takes us to like the home setting. He takes us to like a family setting. And what he's saying is he's saying, hey, you are a son. He says, because you are sons and daughters, God has sent the Spirit of his Son, Jesus, into our hearts, crying out, Abba, Father. Now, Abba, we've talked about this word even just this year. This is a word that means daddy. It's super emotional, super relational, super intimate. And so he's saying God sends his Spirit because he lives within us and he's a part of us and he wants to do life with us. And when he's in there, it's like God is crying out from within us, Dad, Daddy, Dad, Dad, like a little kid to their dad. That's how we are to God. And he says, so now you are no longer a slave. You don't have to be a slave. You are a son. You get the difference? You are no longer a slave, which is the worst. You are a son. And that's what it is. You could separate everybody in this world in two separate categories. And the truth is, either you are a slave to this world or you are a son or daughter of God. By the way, let me just point out, do you notice what it says about our feelings here? Did you see it in there? Nothing. Doesn't say anything about our feelings. There's a lot of people I talk to where they're like, but no, I don't feel like a son. I don't feel like God likes me anymore. I don't feel like he's proud of me. I don't feel like this. I don't feel like, I'm like, I don't care how you feel. I'm not a good counselor, okay? Let me just say that. All right, that's not what you want to say. I know, all right. But I'm like, it doesn't matter what you feel. Look at reality. Right? If you have surrendered your life to him, it doesn't really matter how you feel. That's all you. Our feelings are messed up. Our heart is jacked up, okay? So whatever you feel, you need to take that with a grain of salt because a lot of times our feelings lie to us, right? If you have surrendered your life to Jesus, you're his kid. He views you as a son and as a daughter. You're his, and he is yours. He says, then God has made you on top of all that. You're not just some rando kid that he's like, okay, you're one of them. I've adopted all these people, and you're just one of them. No, he has made you an heir, meaning everything that I have, God's saying, will be yours, meaning his stuff will be our stuff. And when you realize this, and when you realize that God views you as a son and a daughter, man, the religious performing goes away. And the religious pretending, that goes away because we have been set free from that. If you've given your life over to Jesus, you are free from that. Do you remember when your kid took your first steps? Or not your first steps, their first steps. Remember that? All right, parents out there, remember how that was? My first kid, so Toby, he's going on 10 in just a few weeks, which is crazy. I was a little worried about him because when he was like, just when he was a baby, like he had this massive head, okay? It was huge. Like, it was just like, dude, that's not natural. I don't know what do you do about that, And so I was a little worried. I'm like, this kid's never going to be able to walk. Like, his neck's going to have to be like huge, to be able to do this thing. And so a few months go by, right? Kid starts crawling around. And you're watching, you're oohing, you're all in. You gotta move all the stuff from this eye. You gotta move it up to this eye so they can't touch anything. And then a few more months go by. They start like kind of standing, but they use the furniture. They kind of climb up, and then you gotta move the stuff from here to here. And they're kind of wobbly and everything, but they haven't taken a first step. But some point they do. At some point they take that first step. Now, you know what they didn't do? They didn't wake up that morning and go, you know what I should do today? I'm really thinking about maybe today's the day. I think I'll take that first step. You know, maybe just 2 or 3 steps today. Like, I think it's time. Mom's been really bugging me about this lately, and so, I'm just get her off my back, and I'll just do that. No, that's not what happens. We know that. Right? They're standing there holding on to something. They're all shaky and stuff, and what happens? They see something that they want, and they lean that big head out in that direction, and momentum just kind of takes over. And they're not trying to do anything. They just, really what they do is they put a foot just to kind of keep themselves from face planting. They take a few steps, and then they fall down. Right? That's what happens. And what do you moms do when that happens? You start, you start crazy. I got a walker. He's walking. You get your phone out. You're trying to get him to like replay. You're like, no, you stand here. Do that again. All this stuff. Usually they don't cooperate. And then you dads, if you're there for it, you're like watching this, like, oh man, this is crazy. You're all pumped up too, because as he was going down, he kind of did one of these. You're like, I think he's gonna be the Heisman. He's doing the pose. Like, what? He kind of did that as he fell, and everybody's excited. And everybody's pumped up, and you're all celebrating, and everybody is excited when that day happens. Now, think about it. When your uncle does that, you call him a drunk. When your child does that, you're excited because he's walking, and you're proud of him, and you're excited. Listen. That's kind of how God views you. You're not perfect. You don't do everything the way that God calls you to do it. But he loves you so much. He is proud. He is excited to be your dad. That's the relationship here. And when we actually view ourselves as sons and daughters, when we actually view ourselves as heirs, it completely changes how we view life. All those bad weeks we have, it's not a big deal. Who cares? Instead of letting things bother us, all the little things that bother us at work, at home, school, whatever that might be, those things don't bother us. We got joy. I'll tell you one thing, we wouldn't complain anymore. What would we have to complain about? See, our problem is that we live like this is our long-term home. That's our issue. We're so focused on all these little things that just don't go our way, and we spend our money and our energy and our effort and our time as if this is home. And we totally forget the big picture. Think of it this way. Think of it as like you get a huge inheritance and from some uncle that you didn't know, all right? So you're all happy because you didn't even know the uncle. He's dead, and so you got this huge inheritance. And you get the keys to this like huge estate. Let's just say it's like a massive like mansion house. You could kind of picture it in your head. It's a couple hours away, but it's on, let's say, hundreds of acres, and it's got a long driveway with trees lining up the driveway. It was just awesome. All right, pool. It's got all the things. Okay, and so it's worth millions of dollars. And you get this, and you get the keys, and you weren't expecting anything like this, and you didn't deserve anything like this. And it's just like, hey, this thing is now yours. And so what are you going to do? You're going to take that day off of work or something, and you're going to go drive, and you're going to check this thing out. And it's going to be exciting. You get in your car, you get there, you drive the 2 hours to this place, and you turn in the driveway, and let's say that little, tire is, pressure blinker light turns on right as you dings on right as you get into the driveway, and you're like, and you stop there, and you're like, oh, I just put air in these tires. What's going on? You get out, you start looking around, you're looking at the tire, like, sure enough, yeah, it looks flat. Maybe it's not totally flat yet, like I could still drive around, but man, this is gonna be an issue. I'm probably gonna have to take this to a tire place and get the, I'm gonna have to plug this hole, and I'm gonna have to do this, do that. And you're going through all this stuff, and you're doing this, and you're just complaining about all these things as you're just in the driveway pulling into your multi-million-dollar estate that's just waiting for you. Do you get how dumb that is? Do you understand that's what we do every single time we complain about anything? We got this huge inheritance waiting for us, not just for the rest of our lives, for eternity. And then we complain about all these stupid little things in our life. And we let those things bring us down. See, we don't think about the fact that God is our dad, and again, he has adopted us for no good reason. We forget when we complain about all these little things that we are heirs, that his home someday will become our home. And that's what Paul's trying to get us to understand. He's like, if you could only get this through your thick skull. He's like, you are God's child. You're his kid. He's saying, act like it. Not be a perfect angel. You can't do that, by the way. Although we should try to do life God's way, of course. He's saying, but don't be a slave to this world. That's why he came, to set you free from that. He repeats himself. He says, in the past, right? Now, every single one of us in this room, you understand we all have a past. Some of us, we're still in the past, meaning we haven't given our lives over to Jesus. But if you have done that in your life, you realize you have a past. And it's not a good past. He says, in the past, since you didn't know God. We all have a past that we did not know God. You remember that? You remember those days? It's messed up. He says, you were enslaved to the things that by nature are not God's. Meaning you put things above God. Anything that we put number one in our life. Well, let me say this. It might be number 4, 5, 10, 15, 50, whatever. Right? Anything we put above God in our life. He's saying we are enslaved to, and we treat them as like little gods in our life. We worship those things. So some of us, that's relationships, right? That could be our kids we put above God. That might be family we put above God. Relationships. Right? If you're so fearful of being alone, and it's just something that you just think about all the time, I'm just saying you are a slave to relationships. Right? Or some people, if your current relationships just kind of aren't doing it for you, like I'm going to move on, and you find yourself bouncing from relationship to relationship to relationship or friendship to friendship to friendship, I'm just saying, it sure looks like relationships are something that own you. They're a little G God in your life. Others of us is money. We're obsessed with money. We're stingy with our money. We're not generous with our money. There's people on different extremes. Some people are so worried about if they're going to have enough money to like retire or anything like that, and so we're constantly thinking about that. Other people, you got some money in the bank, and that's cool. And so what you do is you look at your bank account, and that amount that you have there and that number that you see, it makes you feel safe. Both extremes are slaves to money. Is it approval of others? Like, which one is it for you? When someone's upset with you, man, it just bothers you. Or if there's someone who just doesn't like you, you just don't understand why. It's not fair. Man, it steals your joy. What you're doing in that moment is you're allowing other people's opinions to determine your joy. You're an heir. You've become a slave to the approval of others. Is it looks? Man, if I could only look like that. You have become a slave to how you look. Is it health? I eat this, not that. You're always at the gym, you're doing your thing, and you place that above God. You have become a slave to your own health. The biggest one, and what these people were dealing with, and what a lot of people, probably every single one of us at times in our life in here, the big one is just religion. We do all this church stuff. We do it to impress God. And when that ends up happening, what I've seen in other people's lives is we start looking down on other people that we deem as not as good as we are. We're like, wow, they don't follow the rules like I do. They don't live the kind of life that I do. They mess up, unlike me. We have all these things, and we become a slave to man-made rules and man-made religion. Paul's saying they literally become little g gods in your life. He says, but now we're different. Key phrase, but now. That's how we were before we had a relationship with Jesus, but now that is not how we live anymore. That's not how we're supposed to live anymore. He says now, since we know God and we have a relationship with God, and it's almost like he catches himself here. I think he's writing this out, which is true, but then he's like, let me put this a different way, because that gives us too much credit, right? It's not just us knowing God. In fact, it's more like rather, he says, we have become known by God. And God's the one who's did all the work. He says, how can you turn back again to the weak and worthless elements? He's like, you tasted freedom from all that. You let go from all your good religious stuff, but you go back to that. You go back to being slaves to relationships and money and approval of others and looks and health and all this stuff. And he's just like, why? Why would you do this? This makes no sense. Think about it. You have a big G, holy, infinite, all-powerful God of the universe who wants to be your dad. But what we end up doing is we keep running back to all the little G gods of this world. That is dumb. And we all do it. He says, do you really want to be enslaved to all those things all over again? Is that what you're going for? Do you want to be enslaved to those things? And then he gets more specific. He's like, man, look at you. You're observing special days and months and seasons and years and just all these things. He's saying, you're doing all this religious stuff. You're so careful to celebrate all the religious holidays. You're good. All right, for them, that was like Passovers and festivals in the Old Testament and stuff. By the way, as Christians, can I just throw this out? We are not required to celebrate any religious holiday, especially from the Old Testament. Many times, many churches, maybe your previous church, they held to a strict, you have to do these certain things on these certain days. Well, that's religion. Some of us, we were slaves to holidays and religions, and Paul's like, man, that's fine, like that you think about those things or whatever, but he's just like, that won't save you. See, this is such a big deal to Paul, and such a reversal of the gospel. He says, man, I'm afraid for you. I'll be honest. I'm afraid for you that maybe, just maybe, my work with you has been a waste. Super sad. This is like the low point of the letter. And as Paul's writing this, again, he doesn't have any eraser or anything like that. I mean, he's writing this, he's just like, ugh. I don't know how to get these people to understand. He's basically saying, I question whether you can even be a Christian if you keep running back to those things in this world that won't save you. He's like, I question whether you're even a Jesus follower. I don't even know if you can be saved. And he's like, am I just wasting my time with my words? All the time that I spent with you, was all that just a complete waste? He says, my children, I am again suffering labor pains for you until Jesus is formed in you, and meaning until your relationship with God grows. He says, I would like to be with you right now. I would love that. And change my tone of voice because I don't know what to do about you. Does that sound like your mom? That sounds like my mom right there. I heard that all growing up. I don't know what to do with you. And I'm like, well, just let me do my own thing. That'd be great. How about that? And that never worked. Paul's like, man, I love you guys like a mom loves her kids, is what he's saying. He says, and I feel sick because you guys have left Jesus for religion. See, this is how big of a deal religion is for Paul. Pretty big deal. He said, man, I don't even know if you could be saved. I feel sick. This disgusts me. This is a big deal for religion. It's just a bunch of man-made, self-help, robe-wearing set of rules that we think if I do this good stuff, and if I do this religious stuff, then God's going to let me in his club and we're good. Paul's like, no, when you do that, you're actually a slave to it. Number one, you never know if you're good enough. That's an issue. Number two is you are doing part of the work. He did it all. You don't do nothing. He's saying on the opposite end, he says the gospel is Jesus came to set you free. And as he purchased your position as a son or daughter, even more than that, as an heir, his home becomes your home. His stuff becomes your stuff. That, by the way, is great news. That is the good news. That, by the way, is what we call the gospel. You are a son and daughter of God. He purchased you. It cost him. He paid for all of it. You don't have to do nothing. And we'll pick up right there next week. Let's pray. Dear God, some of this stuff is hard to understand, and Paul kind of keeps going round and around and around and around, but I think part of that is because we just don't get it. It's like you want to hammer this into our minds, that it is not about what we do, it's about what you did. God, we ask that you would help us understand that, help us to live our lives in accordance to that we We want to honor you with our life, and we want to do good, not to make you proud or necessarily, or not to kind of prove our worth or to earn it in any way. No, we do it just simply to honor you because you saved us. You didn't have to, and you love us, and your way's just better. God, help us to live for you, and help us to understand in our minds the difference between religion and the relationship that you call us to. Lord, we need your help. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you here next week at Grace.